happy to be here. I like this terminal a lot. We have a great team here. We have Justin, who's our grain merchandiser. He helps connect you with the world. He's selling grain into the world. We have Eddie Gould, who most of you guys would know, and Dave Smith, who's the other grain buyer. Raj Anju at the back of the room there is our operations supervisor. And with that, probably jump right into see what we got going on at Cargill. So it's a big company, not gonna lie. I know that's a bad thing to some people, but it is a privately held company. At least we're not answering to shareholders. We are in the anything and everything to do with food. So everything from animal nutrition all the way through to chicken McNuggets and everything in between. Sarnia is primarily a link in the chain for grain. And I say link in the chain because we're connecting you guys with the world. When we ship, and I'll get to that, when we ship, we're not shipping direct to people who are buying your grain. It's going to another terminal where it'll get consolidated and then on to world markets from there. So through agriculture, food, there's some crazy stat that maybe you guys have heard, but something on the order of 80% of all the food in the grocery store has something from Cargill in it. You know, you think about all the ingredients, all this, you know, soybean oils and corn oils and canola oils. We're in all of them. So those are all ingredients that end up in food in the grocery store. Yeah, it's a phenomenal stat. I don't know how true it is, but somebody told me that not long ago, and I don't doubt it at all. And I wheel this, and there we go. So yeah, our strength, Cargill's strength, is in how big that chain is. This terminal sits in between a terminal in Thunder Bay and a terminal in Baie-Comeau. So, and that's generally the flow. Almost all the grain from here, especially wheat, is on its way to Baie-Comeau. You'll see a big boat on the walking tour sitting out here. We're loading it for Baie-Comeau. Baie-Comeau is a much bigger elevator than us. They'll consolidate, and people like Justin will help connect Mexico with Canada, and or anywhere in the world for that matter. With the size comes a considerable amount of strength in terms of developing animal nutrition, developing your chicken McNuggets, your Chick-fil-A's of the world. We have food processing plants, we have meat processing plants, we have chocolate plants, we have, you name it. If it's got something to do with food, we're in it. The size and scope of it is just phenomenal. More than 50 research and development facilities around the world. To me, these slides feel like they're in the wrong order because we still haven't got to it, but Cargill's something like 155,000 people in, I don't know, 70 countries. It's on another slide.
You know, your slide, you're about 3 slides ago had it.
Yeah. Did we? Nice.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
Yeah, there you go. 155,000 in 70 countries. Been around a long time. We have not owned. Sarnia Elevator has been around a long time as well. 1928, and it was Maple Leaf for a lot of years, and then it became Cargill. So, yeah, there's strength in numbers. We're able to do things that, you know, smaller companies may or may not be able to do. Obviously, the world has a need for food, and with I'm sure hot button items are things like urban sprawl, and you read in the news about the green belts becoming housing developments down in Toronto. All those people need to eat, and that's where we fit in. That's where you guys fit in. We're here to help feed everybody. growing population. I think the world sits at 8 billion right now, and it's projected out to be closer to 9.8 in another 25 or so years. So what are they going to eat? So that brings us to Sarnia's terminal. There's not, just give you a lay of the land. Fertilizer domes, we're missing one. We've added one since this photo was taken. This is what we commonly refer to as our house, our silos, the annex, and we'll get into some stats on how much each one holds. A little bit, just about everything you ever wanted to know about Cargill, Sarnia, right there. So, Maple Leaf, 1988 is when it became Cargill. There's at least 24 full-timers that work here and another 20 during the season. The season typically gets going somewhere just ahead of when your wheat harvest gets going and wraps up once corn is wrapping up. So 7-8 months of the year almost, we're running closer to double the number of people. Right now, yeah, we're up there. We're pretty much fully staffed, 154,000 tons we can hold. That house will hold 75,000 ton when it's full. The annex will hold another 75 to 79, depending how full we stuff. We've got a nice deep water dock out there that 750 feet long, and we'll put boats on there that are in excess of that. The limiting factor on the boat length is generally the Welland Canal. So, but the biggest boats that ply the lakes do come here, and they are carrying grain. The Jackman was here last week. He's over 750 feet. He's just about built for the lock system on the lakes. He's got about a foot to spare on either end when he's going through some of those locks. When we're loading boats, we've got 2 spouts that go at it. Not unusual for us to be putting 1,000 metric ton an hour onto a boat. We won't quite go around the clock, but easily 20 hours a day, so 20,000 metric ton, 500 truckloads a day getting put onto. And we can't receive at 500 a day, and that's where the house comes in. We use that as a big buffer. We're receiving, we're filling, and then if everything works right, the boats show up at the right time, we empty her out, and the cycle repeats. I don't see where it says how many boats a year we do. That's probably coming up later, but it's a substantial number. I've already lost count in the last 2 months of how many boats we've done. We have a big dryer there, so if the corn or the wheat or whatever is wet, we have an ability to dry it. You'll see it on the walking tour. It's a good sized dryer. We can unload by rail, we can unload by truck. We cannot unload by boat. So receiving wise, in terms of bringing stuff into here, we're bringing it in by truck and rail. The only thing we receive by boat is fertilizer. We don't. And then in terms of shipping, we'll get into some nice pie charts that show how the various commodities leave, but we can ship by rail, we can ship by boat, and the vast majority of it that leaves here is leaving by boat. There's your pie charts. So where's it going and how's it getting there? The blue is boats, so almost 90% of everything that leaves here leaves in a boat. Little bit by rail, little bit by truck. And it's pretty interesting where it goes. These fellows have a piece where they'll explain a little more about the different grains, because it's different with every one. So soybeans, the vast majority of soybeans are going into the export market. Corn's the exact opposite. Almost 90% of it's coming domestically. It's going somewhere. We're going to hold it. And generally, that's what's going out in your train. That little percentage that we're shipping by train, that's almost all corn and soybeans. We don't ship any wheat by train that I know of. So, and wheat's all over the place, but I won't get into that. There's people who specialize in where we're sending it. Fertilizer, that's the other side of the business. So if we're not bringing in grain, we're handling fertilizer. We've got 5 big domes out there. They're anywhere from, we just filled one that holds 7,500 metric tons. So it's, what's the math on that? About 50 or so truckloads at least. I'm probably doing that wrong. No, it's closer to 150 truckloads of fertilizer in there. That stuff came in by boat. That got pretty interesting because as long as my dock is out there, I can't fit 2 boats. And in the middle of wheat harvest, to be receiving a boatload of fertilizer is a real challenge. Man's got to eat. So yeah, I don't know if there's any boat watchers in here, but there are certainly a lot of them in Sarnia. And we did something here last week that's never been done. We took our fertilizer boat, we were unloading on our dock, but we had 2 wheat boats coming back to back. And we moved our fertilizer boat across to the city slip just across the water. And we unloaded into trucks and we trucked it around the corner and put her in the domes.
Wow.
We caused a little bit of a traffic jam the Monday morning. Without exaggeration, there was a traffic jam out watching. I'm sure I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff because everybody had a camera going. And of course, you're unloading all this in the public eye, so yeah, huge. It's not for me. Might be for Raj. The fertilizer business here is busy. We'll turn over those domes at least a few times in a season. Urea, potash, MAP, and generally from 2 different suppliers. So depending on what brand you're after, we're probably carrying it. It's an interesting part of the business that I'm just starting to get my head around. So, yeah, 5,500 metric tons in those 5 domes. 55,000. That's a lot. But I think that's the end of my piece there. So I'll stop there and turn it over to people who know what they're talking about when they talk about grain. It's not my piece.
I don't know who that is.
Who's up? Is
I think it's
up
me.
is
I
up.
don't know if that's what he means, but
Yeah.
whoops, I'm going the wrong way here. There we go. So we're gonna just go over overview of grain markets a little bit. So currently we do about, on average, we do about 850,000 a year of between corn, soybeans, and wheat. Our biggest 2 would be corn wheat and soybeans, and then we do corn on exports. We estimate that we do about 100,000 tons of fertilizer. We did a little over 750,000 tons last year. You were talking about the numbers. We do about 43 vessels a year. On average, our vessel size is between 25 and 29 to 31,000 tons a pop. So we do about 43 of those a year. And most of those go to our deep water terminal in Baie-Comeau, Quebec. So our deep water terminal in Baie-Comeau, Quebec is about 350,000 tons of total space there between flat and upright. So it is, and still is, the largest space-wise deep water terminal in North America. So, it is a facility that is boat in and boat out. There's no rail in. I don't know if anybody been to Baie-Comeau, Quebec? There's basically one road going into Baie-Comeau, Quebec, and the goat fell off it. So there's not much coming in by truck. So it's tight to get in there. So that's where most of our stuff goes to be transloaded into your bigger Panamaxes, and or we do a lot of grocery boats, we call them. So there'll be a combination of, Ryan talked about our Western terminal at Thunder Bay. So Thunder Bay will bring your CWS, your Western wheats, your hard red wheats, some beans too as well. And we'll do grocery boats. So we'll do maybe a hold of 2 or 3 holds of soft red winter, a little bit of CWS, a little bit of Durham, and then that'll hit a bunch of different countries, and so that they can have a good blend of what they're looking for, right? So typically, how wheat is used here. So Ontario wheat is typically used, it's not to make bread, it's more for whether it be feed, especially in the world market, it's more goes into the feed market, and then to make like Kraft uses to make crackers and pastries, anything that doesn't rise, basically, because of the low pro. So it's like crackers and your white, those white little donuts, you know what I'm talking about? That kind of stuff. Anything that doesn't like
Tortillas.
bread. Yeah, that too, that kind of stuff. Triscuits, big time. A lot of Triscuits come out of here.
And it wraps too.
Yeah. a lot of Triscuits come out of here, loading boats going to Toledo. So Toledo would be, which is Mondelez, would be one of our biggest partners here. So we do probably 70% of their total Canadian wheat grind comes out of Sarnia, Ontario. So anytime you're eating a Triscuit, that's where it's coming from. So our object is to get to 1 million tons. We've been close a few times. We've never quite hit the 1 million. So we want to do 1 million tons a year is the goal. Not quite there, but man, we're working on it. Okay, so yeah, so as we see here, so our export business, so our wheat beans, I already mentioned that. And really what the export business does, it's our job to keep everybody honest, basically, when it comes to your domestic business. It can't go too cheap, because at the end of the day, that's where we come in, load boats, and ship it out of here to tighten up S&Ds. And that's why corn is an interesting one. And I'll get into it a little bit more detail, but it really does swing between being a net importer and a net exporter. Whereas you look at wheat and beans, beans basically 90%'s got to go, and we call it 60%'s got to go somewhere. There's just not enough domestic demand to handle it. And when I say go, it doesn't mean it has to go to Europe or Africa, or some of it is, right across the border to Toledo and go into some of those flour mills too as well. We're one of 6 terminals. We are typically, in the province, we're typically 30% of the overall export market share. So what leaves, we do basically 30% of that, typically. As you guys have seen it probably in corn, but as production continues to grow, obviously the need for exports continue to grow. And so that's where, and Ryan talked about it a lot, is where our relationships in, whether it be Mexico and whether it be into China for beans, or Europe for beans, North Africa for wheat, Mexico for Latin America for wheat, that kind of thing. Those would be our major places that we're trying to compete with, and we got to compete, right? So in the export market, we're competing with the Gulf. A few of you were talking about it today. There's Black Sea and Russian wheat too as well. So we were constantly having to compete with countries that may or may not have a bigger export stance than we do. So typically, if you look at how we handle our business, and again, I'm talking averages here. So some years, obviously this year it's going to be higher on the wheat front because of the 1.3 million acres, lower on the beans. But on average, we're about 45% wheat, 45% soybeans, and about 10% corn. And like I say, corn's the interesting one because, as you're all well aware, we go from net importers to net exporters really quick. So we bring corn in if the domestic market needs it. Haven't had to do that for a few years, obviously, and then we are exporting if there's not enough options. And on that side is typically on the corn front it's rail cars and boat mostly going to Europe. So, but we'll get into more detail on that one. So one thing with our whole, if you take a look at our whole pie, again we're talking averages here depending on the quantity, but it's about 480,000 acres is basically what we bring in here every year, on average. So it's a significant amount of acres that, whether it be corn, wheat, or beans, that actually hit this facility and continue to feed the world is what it's our motto, and we try to live it every day too as well. So, yep. Who wants out?
So, last 5 years we've had you know, just shy of 900,000 acres of wheat. This year we're 1.3, right? So, yeah, so average domestic use on that stays about the same. We got on there that, you know, normally export between 1 million and 2 million tons. This year it's closer to probably 4. Just with, you know, we got a really good yield and we got big acres. So more's got to leave them, you know, which is good. You know, Justin talked about, you know, where a lot of the export markets are, you know, Mexico, Latin America, the U.S., and parts of Africa. So, and then, yeah, we're always competing. You know, he talked about the different spots in the world where we're always competing against. And again, it's just to keep those domestic guys in check with what they're trying to do here.
That's like you take a look. Your biggest competition for your wheat is the U.S. Their soft winter wheat crop, which for some reason the world seems to think that wheat grown in, I don't know how. Can you drive two golf ball drives over to get over the river here? In the U.S. seems to be worth more than Canadian wheat, which we keep proving. Oh, we're still 9.5 Pro. We're still 300 falling number. We're all the same stuff. So that they're our biggest competitor. Then French white wheat is right there behind us, and again they're competing with the feed market. And then the big boys, which is the Black Sea, which is Russia and Ukraine. You put them together, they're 1 and 2 in the world. Canada's 3. And so we have a hard time. Those are the big competitors that we just gotta try to beat out. And you think with all the stuff that's happening, the part that I find shocking, with all the things that's happening with Russia, we're still 3 cents cheaper. They're taking Russian wheat. Like it blows my mind. But it's I don't know. It blows my mind. They still are. The world's still the lowest cost buyer, no matter what's happening politically or what the newspapers say. So. Throw that in there.
One more on the way here, sorry. Yeah, and then soybeans, you know, it's been pretty static as far as acres. I think acres are down a little bit this year again, just because of the big wheat acreage. So yeah, we definitely have to export every year with beans. We grow way more beans than our domestic usage. Our domestic usage in Ontario hasn't changed in 25 years?
Yeah. ADM and Bungie.
ADM and Bungie. We got 2 crush plants. Sorry, this is for crush beans.
Yeah.
Yeah, crush beans, our domestic market has been very, very stable for a long time. So, you know, as yields improve and acres shifts and stuff like that, that's where we come into play again to keep that domestic market in check. Yeah, and we're always competing with the U.S. on beans, now South America. So yeah, South America is becoming well, they are the big one. They're the big one. Yeah. Yeah,
in South America, like it used to be Chicago always cared what happened in the U.S. and in South America it had some issues. It was okay. Now I'm aging myself here, so just keep that in mind. But in the last 10 years, South America is the driver. They are driving the bus, and their yields continue to grow, their acres continue to grow, and they're learning how to be more efficient, I guess we'll put it, in their export chain. So they start their bean harvest rate in April, May, and once they start, we're done. And I don't mean we're as in Canada, I'm talking U.S. is done too. We're just not going to do them. They're cheaper, and there's a lot of them. The beans aren't as good, but they still make them happen anyway. They're still cheaper, so.
So that's why we have a very large export program in the fall, is to offset, well, when they're not shipping, that's when we're shipping, so, yeah.
Oh, okay, so, corn, I said corn's a little bit complicated. So, the 2 things where we really come in is when you have quality issues, and I'm not gonna say the words, I'm not gonna swear at it, but it starts with a V. You've probably all heard of it. I'm not saying it out loud because then it won't happen, right? So we'll keep it quiet. But when those, potential issues rise up, that's where we really kind of come in and help to get rid of wheat that the domestic market can't, or sorry, corn that the domestic market can't use. And because the interesting thing with corn is that we just continue to, the yields are crazy. I mean, it just continues to grow and grow and grow. So exports continue to grow with it. And as you can take a look, take basically 50% of our, if I take a look at, we got 2 million acres, we're about 8.8 million crop. It's an 81 bushel yield on average, depending who you talk to. So if you talk to StatsCan, on average, it's 165. If you talk to OMAFRA, it's 181. So call it 180 average. But that's in the last, call it 10 years. That average continues to grow at a significant rate. And so, we used to say we were about an 800,000 ton exporter. That was 5 years ago. Now we're about 1 million to 1.3 million. Where does it continue to go from here? And so, a lot of our exports are whether it be in rail going down into the southeast of the chicken market, which can take higher, the V word, I'm not going to swear at you, down south, and Europe does too as well. So that's kind of where we kind of come in to help. And then if the domestic market gets cheap enough, that's when we walk in and say, okay, well, hey, here we go. There's a floor. Exports will start to ship it out until they say stop, and they're going to stop by moving their bids up, right? And so that's kind of where we come in, and then like I say, there's times in the season where we've been importers, but that's not there. That in the last 2 or 3 years, that hasn't been a big deal. We've kind of got away from that. But Europe is our major market we go to, whether it be Ireland or Brest or France, Italy, that kind of stuff. They would be the major takers of corn, and that's kind of the market that we're in. It typically leaves on salties. So that is vessels that come in here and they go straight from here, straight to Ireland, straight to France, straight to Italy, that kind of stuff. So corn doesn't do the Panamaxes very often. It's usually, and they're typically 20,000 tons a pop. And so they'll come in and we'll load them here and then off they go to keep that. I like to call it keep the market in equilibrium. We don't want too much corn. We don't want not enough. Just kind of keep us somewhat stagnant. The last few years, it's felt like domestic market is at the run of the hill. So hopefully, maybe exports can help take some of that pressure off and help out there. I don't know if I have a whole lot to add on the corn front, but it does swing quite a bit, as you guys are well aware. And if we can help push some prices up, we like to. So, I don't know, any questions on the marketing side or?
The one thing I'll add to, and we said it 2 or 3 different times there, was by us exporting boatloads of grain and taking that grain out of the domestic market, that's really helping your basis. Because the domestics know that we export grain and they're going to have to pay up for grain. So anytime we're exporting grain, it's really good for you, the Ontario farmer. Because that grain's not in their hands anymore. They know it's not in the bins. It's in the St. Lawrence Seaway or it's over in Europe. But that's what drives your basis. So that's the one message that I see loud and clear, and I just wanted to make sure he's seen that too.
I think.
Do you ever have a problem with quality shipping from here, good quality getting to Europe, and there's an issue? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so typically what we have is we have a third-party grader, right, that comes in, that whether it be Intertech, SGS, to confirm grades. But we've had where a leaky hull and water gets in it, and all of a sudden you've got rotting wheat or grain when it gets there, or smell odor to it, and then that gets interesting. That we do have it, not very often. Pretty, if typically what we load here usually gets down there, it's usually pretty good shape. But there is times where that has happened. It gets to destination and they say, okay, my grade says Canadian number 2, XX and Y, and this is what I got, and then a conversation is had at that point. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, but that absolutely happens. Yeah, not often, hopefully. Usually it takes pretty good. Any other questions? I'm assuming everybody doesn't want to listen to us and they probably want to go on the tour, so take her away
Fair
there.
enough.
Keep yourselves visible out there. We're going to give you vests. It's really busy out there.
Yeah.
Stay in a group. Don't be wandering off somewhere.
Yeah, it is pretty busy. We are in the middle of pushing to get as much wheat in here as we can right now. So typically, we're aiming for 150, 160 trucks a day coming through. And we're open tonight till 10 o'clock at night with last truck into the yard at 9. So it's busy. That is your number one hazard as you're out walking around, is getting smoked by a truck, and you won't win that argument. So yeah, please pick up a high-vis vest. We'll stay out of anywhere where you really need a hard hat. Nothing should fall on your head because we don't have enough hard hats to go around. But yeah, high-vis vest and safety glasses. We'll go for a little tour, have a look at whatever there is to see from ground level without going inside the house per se, because we just don't have the equipment to take it all in there. Your second biggest hazard is trip and fall stuff. So please watch where you're walking and walk where you watch, because there's some uneven ground, there's trip hazards. We want everybody to enjoy your look around. We're happy to answer questions, but we don't want anybody hurt at the same time. So there's always some reservations about doing these sorts of things, because, geez, we don't want to hurt the public, and you guys, you're our partners. We want you to leave here in the same shape you showed up. So yeah, I think myself and Raj will take you around and try and show you a few things, and I don't expect it to be a long walk. Probably just down the domes, and we'll have a little look at what goes on there, and maybe circle by the shipping office and get a little close to the boat, but not too close, and probably call it a tour at that point. That shipping office, you asked about quality control when it gets to Europe. When we're loading a boat that's exporting, there's always third-party graders on hand, and they're continuously sampling. Every 1,000 metric ton, they're taking a composite sample and grading it and checking everything. Falling number and protein, and you name it, they're doing it, and it's a continuous process. Very vigorous on export. Internally, this boat is loading for Baie-Comeau, so 31,000 metric ton. It's heading to our facility. So we will do composites on it. We are doing lots of quality control, but it's not third party. It's our guys who are doing it. They're all certified and well-trained graders who are doing that. But that's what we refer to as a shipping office. It's sort of the control room with a little lab on the back of it. So.
One more thing, except for the US, we have Canadian Grain Commission on board on site here when we do an export vessel. They are the ones grading the grain.
And we have a lot of regulations that we jump through, and the vast majority of them are all about food safety. Last week we had the Canadian Grain Commission here inspecting all our storage facilities, and they're looking for evidence of any insects. It's a pretty thorough look around, and actually I'm happy to share that we're graded out at double A. There was no evidence of any primary insects anywhere, which is a good accomplishment. That takes a lot of work to get there. And they come back and visit us every 6 weeks and keep looking. They just won't take our word for it that, no, nothing's changed. Now they're coming back. But
So who's paying for the third party?
we do. That's on us. It'll scare you what it costs, but it's necessary. It's in the rules that you want to sell your wheat to an export market, you're doing this, and we do it. So
It's so we don't run into the problems that you talked about, right? You got a third party looking at it. You'll notice when we get in the shipping office, you're gonna see there's two separate rooms, right? So there's a room where our grader sits. Mark, you'll meet. Mark's maybe not on yet, but sitting there, he's doing his grading, thinking, seeing what he sees, and it's a closed door. And the grader on the other side is, whether it be SGS or Enertech or CGC, is doing their thing, and they do not commingle. And they might come back and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing, and Mark will compare. Yep, I agree. No, I don't. As he does his every 1,000 cut increments. So they're sitting separate, so there's no are you sure? You might want to change that one, you know. So yeah, they sit in a separate room and the whole deal. And every 1,000 tons they compare.
Do you have a rodent problem?
We have a rodent control program that prevents us from having a rodent problem. But rodents love grain.
Yeah.
Geese love grain. These geese are generally not very aggressive this time of year. We probably couldn't do tours in the spring when there's young ones, because the geese would be coming after you. Like this is their home, and you'll see them walking away from you. There will be points on this tour where we're walking and the stupid geese are right where we want to go, but you just match their speed, and they know they're moving. They'll move, not quickly, but they will move. But yeah, we're not allowed to have a geese control program. Apparently, that's against the law. But we do have rodent control programs, and again, that's third parties that come in and put all the bait stations out. And we don't want bugs in our grain. We don't want rodents in our grain. We don't need any of that stuff. And yeah, when we're loading these boats and they're pulling their samples from the loading spouts more or less continuously on an export vessel, yeah, if you got bugs in it, you got a big problem. If you got evidence of rodents, you've got a big problem. It's all about cleanliness and food safety. And what little margin you're making can rapidly go down the toilet if your boat shows up at the other end and it's no good. So it's yeah, it's in everybody's best interest to keep those little guys out of our food. So I think that's about all there is to it. So yeah, we'll get you some high vis. We'll go out here, give you a little spiel and point out a few things. Does everybody know how an elevator works? I'm making an assumption, and you know what assuming does. So, but we have multiple unload stations, and I'll point out how you'll see where the conveyors run and how it all gets into the house. We move a lot of grain per hour. It was on one of those slides where we have the capacity to unload something like at least 4 trucks per pit times 4 pits per hour. That's a lot of grain that's moving through here, all on conveying systems. And we're all quite proud of how little dust you'll see floating around too, for the amount of grain that we're moving. You're here right in the busiest. Like, it's busy.
Won't see much dust.
Won't see much dust. So we got these, and when we're all done, don't just wander away. We've got some parting gifts for you. Make sure you take some of your parting gifts. So here, we'll pass a few of these towards the back.
All the horses, right? First place they hit is the road. They've got a smart plant system where they have little RF smart cards. Once they hit the probe, the system identifies them based on their card, and everywhere they go, they'll swipe that card. So at the probe, he swipes. He has a nomination number. That's how we identify him. The probe brings the sample up here into that little building on stilts. There's currently 3 people up there. One of them is what we consider to be an expert grader. He's dedicated, actually, not a he, it's she tonight, who's working up there. And that's what she's doing all through harvest, grading. For the sake of consistency, we'll tend to stick with 2 primary graders right through harvest. We have more on staff, but everybody likes consistency, so us included. So the probe brings the grain up here, it gets graded. By the time the truck hits the scale, we already know if it's grade 2. We already know if it's got bugs. There's a lot of things we already know. Falling number takes a little longer. So if your wheat comes in and it's pretty high sprouted, and we think it's worth
we don't test every load, we test about 10%, but it's a targeted 10%. That's about all I can say about it. I can't get into super big details, but if you need a falling number test, it takes longer. You're gonna sit there a lot longer waiting, staring at the board that says please wait. Once we know what you got, based on moisture, based on sprouts, falling number, they'll get assigned to an unload pit from there. And it's all done no touch. There's no reason for the driver to do what he's doing. He's just going up to visit. Now, we don't tell him not to, but he's going for a visit. That's alright. But that's the basic, and everywhere he goes. So say that truck gets assigned to the hill up top through the swipe station when he gets up there. The smart plan is tracking that truck all the way through, and when he scales out, same deal, swipe out, different scale, but everything matches up as long as the computer systems are working. Some of you may or may not have been sending us grain right after that big storm. We lost the computers for 3 days. It was a bloody nightmare. You have my apologies if you sent us grain in that time. I feel your pain. Nobody got paid. It was a nightmare. 3 days of pain to run those storms. But anyway, we'll go for a little stroll by this fertilizer. What you see behind you was my makeshift that we had out on load and boat at the same time. We were trucking the fertilizer over here and dumping it onto this conveyor, which got it up into our overhead system. And from there, that next dome down got stuffed full of 7,500 metric tons of MAP. We now have MAP, we now have a loader. We broke the loader in the middle of all that, so if you wanted fertilizer in the last 2 days, you also have my apologies. But you can have it now. So we'll circle around, we'll find somewhere convenient to cut through, and we'll come up the other side and have a look at what's doing with the boat. See the old spout on the back, it's a little crude. This one up front is a more modern design. The one at the back is it's got 2 years left in it. We're putting another one like the one up front. It's a much more modern design. There's less dust. It extends out a little deeper into the hold. A little bit nicer solution for loading grain. So that's an upgrade that we've got coming in the next couple of years. But yeah, this boat's probably somewhere between half and 3/4 loaded, maybe even a little further than that. 25. So 25 down, another 6 to go. 5 to 6 to go in there. We'll finish them up tomorrow.
How many hours is this developed?
In perfect conditions, we could run at 1,000 ton an hour. So this boat would be 31 hours plus shifting time and trimming time. We try, when things are going good, should be under 48 hours start to finish. From the time he hits the dock to the time he's gone. This one's going to be a little bit more because we've had some massive rain delays. All that stuff that affects you on the farm affects us too, right? Yesterday was not a good day for loading boats. So
when it's raining, you actually stop loading?
we stopped the boat for sure, yeah. They won't let us put it on and we don't want to put it on. Those hatch covers, if they were sitting on the ground, they're massive and lets in way too much water. So this is part of our fertilizer handling system. That thing is it's all covered up with rubber, but we can bring, and we will this time next week. We should have a string of 10 or 15 rail cars full of fertilizer. They'll be unloading right where that spout is pointed. There's 2 pits there. They drag it over, it goes up into the lofter, and from there we can send it all over the place. We're actually quite low on fertilizer. The dome we filled yesterday, or finished filling yesterday, is the only one that's right full. The rest all have considerable space in them. We will be stocking up on fertilizer. It's really pretty hard. You guys are gonna want it this fall, and if you don't take it this fall, you'll want it in the spring for sure. So, you know, we got to do a little bit of planning ahead with the seed waves. Once those locks all freeze up, you're not getting any fertilizer in from Tampa, which is where that stuff came from. So, anyway, security will have a fit if you get much closer to the boat than this. He's probably already given me stink eye. One, it hums and vibrates and shakes the ground when it's working. Continuous dribble samples. We're collecting off the boat as it loads. It just stopped dribbling, which means he stopped loading for a little bit. But whenever grain's flowing, that's that newer spout, the square looking one at the front. This is the round one at the back. So we're getting continuous composite sampling doing. Now when we're loading an export vessel or Intertech is here, we have a reason to have a third party. We close this off. This is one grading room, and then we have another grading room at the back. And actually when we leave here, if we can be real nice and go single file out, you're going to see a ton of grain samples sitting there. It's just retains off boats that we've loaded.
So the same sample is divided half. Half it goes to the third party grader, half we get it. So it's just at the back of the wall there. And we take a sample and the third party, you know, they take the sample and we compare each other.
So yeah, if there's no third party involved in this one, because it's a Cargill shipment going to a Cargill facility. But it doesn't mean we're not doing our own. It just means there's one less person filling the room. If this was an export vessel, they wouldn't let us in here. They take over this room and they close this door off, and it's a locked door. And
All the equipment here, it belongs to CGC.
Well, we'll work our way out just through here, and an immediate left turn. You'll see the exit door right in front of you, and we'll reconvene out here and then circle off from there. Head house, the square part at the end, that's where all the lofters are. So the grain is flowing for two reasons. One is gravity, and two is electricity on conveyors. But to use the gravity for all these chutes, you got to get her to the top. And that's where it all happens. On a smaller group, we can take you through, but this facility being almost 100 years old now is not conducive to having a big group. You can see we got 3 unloading stations here. We call these the wet leg or the track. We've got 2 back there, that's the east end. And then over here behind me is a thing called the boat. So these guys who are unloading on the hill, it goes into a pit, eventually ends up running across. You know, you can see where it ties into the annex. We can move grain all over the place here, and we do frequently. The annex currently, that big square building, is just empty, but we will be going in there in a couple of weeks. We'll put 75,000 in it, somewhere between mid-September and end of October. All your September contracts